This is a person who has gone through a traumatic experience, grows up, and has a child. Now the child grows up with symptoms of PTSD, even though she has never experienced any sort of trauma. This concept is known as transgenerational trauma, which is a relatively new study concerning the transmission of trauma and its effects from the generation that initially experienced it to its offspring. This phenomena all boils down to something called epigenetics, but let's start with the basics. DNA. The structure of human DNA is held together by nucleotide bases. Their sequence or order essentially spells out our genes, determining essential instruction within the human body. Every cell in the body has the same DNA. But you may ask, if all cells in the body have the same DNA, how is a muscle cell different from a liver cell? It's like a string of colored lights. If you want it to glow red, then you only leave the red light bulbs on. If you want it to glow green, then you only leave the green light bulbs on. Similarly, muscle cells express muscle genes and liver cells express liver genes. This concept is encompassed by epigenetics, which studies how gene function can be changed by merely turning particular genes on and off, changing the gene's function without changing the sequence. There are two main mechanisms that alter how and which genes are expressed. In DNA methylation, methyl groups are added to cell DNA, turning certain genes on and off. And for histone modification, DNA is wound around histones. The tighter it's wound, the less it's expressed, and groups are added to loosen how tight it's wound to express the gene more. In other words, methyl groups act as on and off switches, while histones act as dimmer switches. These epigenetic changes can be induced by trauma. From studying suicide victims' brains, researchers have proven under stress the human body produces glucocorticoids that alter gene expression. Such traumatic experience can leave scars or epigenetic tags on the DNA at the molecular level. The question is, how can these tags be passed down from parent to child? Well, the egg and sperm derive from specialized cells with gene expression profiles marked with epigenetic tags. These tags must be erased in a process called reprogramming to return cells to a genetic blank state. However, some epigenetic tags make it through this process and pass unchanged to the next generation, which can lead to transgenerational trauma. In summary, numerous studies have shown that life experience, trauma in particular, can cause alterations in gene activity, and these epigenetic changes can be passed down through the DNA from generation to generation. Now, my mom is a survivor of the Cambodian genocide and has suffered PTSD. I did not go through that trauma, but I do suffer from a dissociative symptom of PTSD called depersonalization, even though I've never been through a trauma. You think that's a coincidence?